Now, Herodotus tells us about the first voyage around the continent of Africa. Then it used to be called Libya. And this happened, it happened a few years before he was born, maybe 100 years or almost 100 years before he was born. And the person who made it happen, and I have to emphasize that this was what we today know as the first recorded voyage around the continent. So it's possible other people had done it before, but we don't have those records. So the record we have now comes from Herodotus' history, Herodotus' book histories, and that's where we get to know that there's somebody who put in place a plan and sent out ships to go around the continent to discover whether you could take this other side and come from the other side at the end of it. So the person who did this was an Egyptian king who went by the name Necos. Now, Necos ruled Egypt around 580 or 90s BCE. And he put together, or he decided to do this. Herodotus doesn't tell us why he did that. Maybe he was just curious, or there was other reasons. We don't get those details from Herodotus. What he tells us is that Necos put together a team of Egyptians and Phoenicians. During this time, Phoenicians were known to be very good with sea travel. They did trading using ships. Even war at sea was mostly known to be an area that Phoenicians were very good at. So he hired Phoenicians and he gave them ships, or maybe paid them to build ships, and they traveled. They left Egypt. They went through the Red Sea, into the Gulf of, we call it the Gulf of Aden, into the Indian Ocean, of course. And now they traveled south. Then they came from the Mediterranean. That took them 3 years. It took them a very long time. It took them 3 years to take that journey. And Herodotus tells us that how they survived during this journey is that they went, whenever their food supplies were like diminishing, they went to the coast and then found land. They cultivated, they planted corn, maize as we call it here, and then they waited for it to be ready. They harvested and then they continued the journey. So it took them 3 years, and they went to the south. We assume they went through the Atlantic and then came into the Mediterranean Sea, and then back to Egypt. So that's the first recorded voyage around the continent. And then Herodotus does tell us about other attempts, but he does mention that the Phoenicians who lived in Carthage. Carthage was a kingdom that occupied part of what we know today as Libya. It was a kingdom that was founded by the Phoenicians, who came from the Levant, which is like that part where Jordan, Israel, and where those countries are found. So they moved from there and they went to North Africa and they founded this empire or kingdom, the Carthaginian Empire. And Herodotus tells us that the Carthaginians did after Necho's exploration, did do more voyages around the continent. After that, they did. It doesn't say how many, but they left reports indicating that they had done a few. Now, he also tells us of an attempt by the Persians. Now, an attempt by the Persians seems like it was not a serious attempt because of how it came to be. There was this Persian by the name Tispes. No, he was not Persian. He was like Babylonian, Achaemenian. I think there was a tribe of Babylonians, or they came from that region, but he was under the Persians, and he kind of like he was he was some form of maybe a soldier in the Persian army. So Thespis did he beat up the daughter of Zopyrus. Zopyrus is the guy I told you the story about in my previous video, who mutilated himself and then helped the Persians to conquer Babylon, or to capture Babylon for the second time. So this Thespis kinda beat up the daughter of Zopyrus, and Zopyrus was son to Megabesus, who was one of the 7 Persians who removed the Magus from power, and then Darius became the king. So when he did that, Darius wanted, no, this time it wasn't Darius who was in power when this is happening. It was Xerxes. Xerxes was son to Darius. After Darius died, Xerxes became the king. So it was Xerxes in power at this point. So Thespis beats up this young lady, and then he needs to be punished. Xerxes wants to punish him, and he wants to kill him. But the mom of this guy of Thespis comes and tells Xerxes, oh, don't kill him. Let me give him a punishment that is more severe than you killing him. And then Xerxes let the mom do that, and the mom told the son, you have to go to take a voyage around Libya, which was Africa. So Thespis takes boats or ships, and he has a team, and they go. But Thespis does not go around. He goes and he reaches somewhere, and he gives up. He comes back, and then he's killed. But he does also give us some information. He says that as he was traveling and as he was going along maybe the east coast of Africa, which will be maybe Djibouti, Somalia, Kenya, Tanzania, maybe he reached somewhere there and went back. He did, whenever he didn't have enough food, they will stop, and then he said he will go to the local villages, and the villagers will run away, and he will take their cattle for food and then continue. And then he went back. Now, when he went back, he was killed because he did not accomplish the voyage around Africa. I need to point out something, that the voyage that was set in place by Necos, the information that came out of that, the people who went, when they came back, they told Necos that they reached a point where the sun was now in the opposite direction, and that kind of tells you that they crossed the equator. Of course, they didn't know they had crossed the equator. That's why the sun seemed to be in a different location. But that tells you they crossed the equator. So those were attempts, and also some of them successful, to go around Africa.